This Canadian business faces big trouble from new U.S. policy. When politicians in Washington debate tariffs and taxes, they speak in percentages, billions, and deficits. But how does that language translate for someone in a workshop in Northern Ontario, cutting wood into leaf-shaped shelves for plants? What happens when a sweeping policy designed to fight global drug trafficking suddenly makes it nearly impossible for a Canadian artisan to ship a $35 handmade item to a customer in Michigan or Ohio? This is the story of Jesse Lozier and his small but ambitious company, Lozier Designs. It is also the story of how fragile grassroots businesses can be when global trade policies shift overnight. The birth of a business, Lozier Designs, didn't start with a business plan or a boardroom meeting. It started with a gift. Jesse built a plant shelf for his wife, shaped like the iconic Monstera leaf. Something beautiful and functional that combined his skill in woodworking with a love of design. When he shared photos of the shelf online, something unexpected happened. Friends wanted one. Then strangers started asking. Soon, orders were coming in faster than he could keep up with. Within weeks, Jesse realized he might be onto something bigger than just a one-off weekend project. What made these shelves special wasn't just their design, it was the fact that they were handmade, created in small batches with care and intention. At a time when mass-produced furniture dominated the market, the appeal of something crafted by a real person was undeniable. His business, only a couple months old, looked like it was about to bloom. But success can be fragile, especially when it depends on cross-border trade. The policy shift that changed everything. At first, Jesse thought he was safe. His products were 100% made in Canada. And under the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, CUSMA, they should have been duty-free. On top of that, the long-standing de minimis threshold allowed U.S. customers to import packages worth up to $800 without paying duties. But the Trump administration made a dramatic move, framing it as part of the war on drugs, particularly the fight against fentanyl smuggling. The U.S. slapped a 35% tax on all postal shipments coming from abroad. It didn't matter if the product was duty-free under trade agreements. It didn't matter if it was handmade in Canada. If it came through the postal system, it was hit with the tax. Why does this matter so much? Because most small Canadian sellers rely on Canada Post. Private carriers like FedEx, UPS, or DHL are options, but they're expensive and often accessible only in major cities. For someone like Jesse, living in Northern Ontario, Canada Post isn't just the best option. It's the only option. Overnight, his booming U.S. sales collapsed. The harsh economics of shipping numbers tell the story best. Jesse's shelves retail for around $35. Shipping them to the U.S. via Canada Post costs him about $20. To make the price appealing, he only charges customers $9, subsidizing the rest himself. That's a manageable compromise, until the new tax enters the picture. If he sticks with Canada Post, that's an extra 35% charge slapped onto the customer at delivery. Buyers are confused and frustrated. They send Jesse messages. Why is this suddenly so expensive? And where did this massive fee come from? If he switches to private carriers, the shipping cost alone skyrockets to $30 to $40. Confusion and contradictions. One of the most frustrating parts of this shift is the lack of clarity. Even Canada Post, the very institution responsible for delivering these packages, has issued contradictory information. At one point, Jesse received a quote from Zonos, a duty-calculating partner, saying his product was duty-free at $0. Days later, he was told it was an error. The advantage of big cities and big corporations. Larger Canadian businesses, particularly those based in hubs like Toronto or Vancouver, can sometimes dodge the problem. They use logistics firms like Chit-Chats, which consolidate shipments, truck them across the border, and hand them off to U.S. carriers. By avoiding the postal system, they bypass the 35% tax. But this solution doesn't exist in smaller towns and remote regions. From Toronto displays to Northern Ontario shelves. The irony is that Jesse is no stranger to big business. Before founding Lozier Designs, he worked in Toronto creating large-scale displays for major brands: Nike, Sephora, even the Rolling Stones. He knows what it's like to operate in the corporate world, with its resources and reach. But he deliberately chose a different path. He wanted to create something personal, something rooted in community. He dreamed of building a Canadian design studio that could employ local artists and craftspeople, paying them fair wages and producing beautiful small-batch goods. Turning toward Canada, Jesse has returned his attention to the Canadian market now that sales in the United States are seeing a precipitous decline. Canada is a country with a high level of income, and it has millions of prospective clients, so it is not a tiny consolation prize. When it comes to domestic shipping, it is simple, reasonably priced, and does not require you to deal with the hassles of customs. Sales in the local area have already proven to be rather profitable. Jesse even goes so far as to provide complimentary delivery inside his community, occasionally driving shelves directly to consumers and installing them in their residences or places of business. The challenge of platforms. The game is not being played on an equal playing field, even at this place. Etsy and Amazon, among other platforms, have a strong bias in favor of the United States. In order to increase their sales, Canadian retailers are encouraged to provide services that appeal to American consumers, frequently with suggestions such as, provide free shipping to the United States to boost your sales. A designer's vision. Jesse is not wasting time, even though he has encountered a number of hurdles. As part of his efforts to add more items to his portfolio, he has already begun developing new products. Shelves that are designed to fit snugly into the corners of walls. New colors that will appeal to a variety of preferences. Even cat-specific shelving units, after so many consumers had urged that they be made available. The bigger picture. In the end, Jesse's story is about more than one business. It's about the fragility of small enterprises in the face of global politics. It's about the contradictions of trade wars that claim to protect, but often end up crushing the most vulnerable players. And it's about the choices consumers make every day. Jesse's struggle is not just about trade policies, it's about us, the consumers, and the choices we make about the kind of economy we want to live in. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.